She gave everything to that company, her time, her vision, her weekends, her peace of mind. And then, one morning over a paper cup of coffee, she was fired. No warning, no gratitude. Just a smile from her boss. And a replacement waiting in the wings, his own niece. But what if he underestimated the wrong woman? What happens when the quietest person in the room is actually the one holding it all together? What do you do when your world is taken from you? But the people who betrayed you are the ones who start to fall apart. And most of all, how do you rebuild not just your career, but your dignity, your power, and your voice? This isn't a revenge story, it's something deeper. It's about losing everything you thought defined you and rising with more than just success. You rise with truth. If this story speaks to you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because what you're about to hear might just change the way you see silence. Now, let's begin. I still remember the taste of the coffee. It was too hot, too bitter. The kind of brew you force yourself to drink during long budget meetings because it's familiar, not because it's good. That morning, I was in the middle of explaining our revised quarterly strategy slides half open on my laptop. Darren staring blankly past me when he said it. "Olivia, we need to talk about your role here." His voice was flat, no warmth, no hesitation. I blinked once. My hand hovered over the keyboard, still mid-gesture. I had heard rumors, small ones, whispered in hallways or exchanged over drinks after work. But I dismissed them, because after 8 years of building Blake and Rowan from the ground up after missed birthdays, weekends spent fine-tuning logistics systems, and standing in for Darren at client dinners, I thought I was safe. I wasn't. I slowly closed the laptop, my pulse thudding in my ears. "Of course," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "What's going on?" He leaned back in his chair, laced his fingers together, and avoided my eyes. "This isn't about performance," he began. "You've done great work. No one's denying that. I knew what was coming. I felt it in my bones. It's about fit." He continued, "Cultural fit. We're evolving. And we think the next phase needs fresh energy." There it was. Cultural fit. The same phrase they used in those sanitized press releases about leadership transitions. The corporate code for you don't fit our image anymore. I'd practically built the culture Darren was now so eager to rebrand. I was the one who'd mentored every department lead, established the code of conduct, restructured our onboarding process. Now I was misaligned before I could respond. He pulled out his phone and glanced at it casually. "Camille will be taking over your responsibilities." I stared at him, stunned. "Camille." He nodded. "She's already here, actually." I followed his gaze toward the glass wall that separated his office from reception. There she was. Camille Shaw, 25. MBA from somewhere shiny. Darren's sister's daughter, she stood by the front desk in heels too tall for comfort, scrolling her phone, perfectly unaware of the bloodletting underway. When she looked up and smiled, I realized she hadn't even pretended to wait until I was gone. It wasn't just insulting, it was orchestrated, I see. I said quietly. My hand found my coffee cup again, fingers curling around its now lukewarm surface. Inside, a scream was rising, but I pushed it down. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. I stood up slowly. "Well," I said, setting the coffee aside, "I guess I'll get my things." Darren didn't respond, just nodded slightly, already glancing back at his phone. The walk back to my office felt like a funeral procession. Every step echoed with memories late nights spent building strategy decks, calls with Westfield Solutions when their CRM crashed, and only I knew how to fix it. The night I stayed until 2 a.m. cleaning up after a junior staffer miscalculated vendor invoices by $500,000. I passed Camille on the way. She looked up and beamed. "Hi, I think we'll be working together." "Well, sort of," she chirped, then I said nothing, just kept walking. I didn't trust myself to speak. Inside my office. The light was still on, the air faintly scented with eucalyptus oil from the diffuser. Sarah in HR gave me 2 Christmases ago. I looked around slowly. The photos, the certificates, the whiteboard filled with process diagrams from yesterday's meeting. Everything felt frozen, mid-breath. 8 years. 8 years of turning chaos into systems. 8 years of building the ops infrastructure from scratch. 8 years of making someone else look brilliant while I held the weight. And just like that, it was over. As I packed my things, my phone buzzed. A message from Darren's executive assistant. Your access will be deactivated at noon. Please make sure to turn in your badge at reception. I laughed softly, not bitterly, just tired. Then another ping. Hey, it's Mike from IT. They told me to cut you off in 5, thought you should know. Mike had always been one of the good ones. I replied, thanks, no hard feelings. He sent back a sad face emoji. Before they shut me out, I opened my laptop one last time, typed a goodbye email to the team, nothing dramatic, just gratitude, professional, sincere. I've been honored to build with all of you. Thank you for your trust, your brilliance, and your late-night Slack jokes. Keep building great things. I'll be rooting for you from afar. I hit send, then I shut the lid, for good. As I stepped into the elevator, my phone lit up again. This time with replies. Dozens. Flooding in, and this is insane. Sam from sales. You're the reason this place ran. Lisa in logistics. You built everything. And they gave it to a child. Marcus from biz dev. And then this one, from David, the new hire I'd onboarded last month. Camille just asked me if the client system is an app she can download on her phone. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. I stood in the elevator, mouth open, the doors closing slowly. A hollow laugh escaped my lips. This was going to be fun to watch. I didn't cry. Not on the elevator ride down, not in the lobby, where Camille's laughter echoed faintly across the polished floor. Not even when I handed my badge to the receptionist, who looked more devastated than I felt and mouthed, I'm so sorry. I just walked out the doors, into the Boston morning air, cool, damp, unforgiving. The kind of morning that smelled like new beginnings and endings. By the time I got home, the silence in my apartment greeted me like an old friend. I set my box of office things on the kitchen counter, stood still for a beat, then exhaled. My blazer was still warm from the body heat of a life I no longer lived. I made tea chamomile instinctively, the kind I always reached for after late nights at the office. Then I sat at my tiny desk in the corner of the living room, the one I used during COVID, back when remote work was all the rage. Now, it felt like the perfect place to process the fallout of losing everything I'd worked for. I opened the box and began unpacking, not to return anything, just to remember. A framed photo of our first office team. We were young then, hopeful. I was wearing a blazer 2 sizes too big and standing right next to Darren, back when he still used to listen when I spoke. A handwritten thank you card from a client, Brent from Utah, who once said, "Your team saved my business." I don't forget people who do that. A tiny clay elephant from Sarah, for luck? She'd said. It had sat beside my monitor for years. I didn't notice I was crying until the tears hit the notepad in my lap. Not loud sobs, just quiet grief, the kind that sneaks up on you when no one's looking. My phone buzzed. I wiped my face and picked it up. It was a message from Sarah Kim, head of HR. Is it true you're really gone? I stared at the screen, then typed back, change of plans. A moment passed, then another ping. This place isn't going to last without you. Later that evening, I opened LinkedIn. Just curiosity, maybe masochism. There it was. A post from the official company page. We're excited to announce Camille Shaw as our new head of strategic operations. Camille brings a fresh, dynamic perspective to Blake & Rowan's growing future. Beneath it, a professional headshot of Camille in an over-tailored blazer, standing in front of the office wall where my vision statement used to hang. Fresh, dynamic. 2 words that somehow canceled out proven, experienced, relied upon. I didn't didn't comment. I just stared at the photo until the tea went cold in my hands. The next morning, I woke up early, out of habit. No emails to check, no dashboards to review, just silence. I walked to the window. Rain was falling in slow, deliberate drops. I let it fall without rushing to fill the void. Around noon, another message came in. Nina Torres. She had been our creative director before she'd abruptly left 6 months ago. We hadn't spoken since. Coffee. I replied with one word. Absolutely. We met at a small cafe on Tremont Street, the kind of place where the baristas wear beanies and call everyone friend. I arrived early, took the window seat, and waited. Nina appeared 5 minutes later, scarf soaked, eyeliner smudged, but eyes sharp as ever. She didn't hug me, just sat down, cupped her drink, and said, "Let me guess. Darren said it was about cultural fit." I blinked, then nodded. "Word for word," I said. She sighed. "Same with me, and Rebecca and Liz." My stomach twisted. "You think it's a pattern?" Nina looked at me. "Dead on, Olivia. How many women over 35 are still on the leadership team?" I didn't need to answer. We both knew. 0. "Darren doesn't want pushback," Nina said, stirring her chai slowly. "He wants people who will nod and smile and make him look smarter." I swallowed hard. "And Camille?" "She's not supposed to succeed," Nina said bluntly. "She's just supposed to make Darren seem like the adult in the room." That night, I lay awake in bed, no job, no team, no title, but I still had something, clarity, and a question that wouldn't let me sleep if the system was this broken. What would it take to build something better? The next 2 weeks passed in a strange kind of fog, not sadness, not rage, just a dull ache that sat behind my ribs like a bruise I couldn't stop pressing. Every morning, I woke early. Still, reflexes don't dissolve overnight. I'd make tea, skim headlines, half expecting to see a crisis email from Darren or a panicked Slack from someone on the sales team. But the alerts never came, because I wasn't part of that world anymore, and somehow, they were pretending I never had been. I kept busy, updated my resume, refreshed my LinkedIn banner, started sketching out a consulting site, simple, minimal, black and white. I called it Monroe Method, just a placeholder. I told myself, just something to keep my brain moving, but late at night, I'd catch myself obsessing over the tagline. Systems that scale, leadership without noise, build what lasts. Everything I wrote felt too polished, or not polished enough. What was I even selling? Was I trying to move on, or just prove I still had value? One Tuesday afternoon, I was camped out at Hollow Grounds, a local cafe with draft oat milk lattes and Wi-Fi that cut out every 10 minutes. I didn't mind. The inconsistency made it easier to think without distractions. As I tapped at my laptop, trying to craft a case study from an old client win, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring, then it buzzed again. This time, a voicemail, curious. I played it. "Hey, Olivia, it's Marcus Kwan from Redbridge Tech. Not sure if you remember me. We met at the vendor conference in Austin last year. I just had the weirdest call with someone from your old company, Camille. I think can you give me a call back when you get a chance?" My fingers froze over the keyboard. I called him immediately. "Marcus," I said, keeping my tone light. "What's going on?" He sounded relieved. "Thank God." "So, I got a cold call from Camille this morning. She said she's taking over your role, wanted to reintroduce Redbridge to the service suite." I blinked. "We've had a signed agreement with Redbridge for the past 18 months. That's what I said. He chuckled, then sighed. "She had no idea. Offered me a quote that was almost double what we're paying now. Said the old pricing model was outdated." I pressed my forehead against my hand. She didn't even know which services we were using. Marcus added, "I had to explain the stack we built with you." "Then she tried to upsell me something we already implemented with you?" "Marcus, I'm not with the company anymore," I said quietly. "They made some changes, I figured." He said, "But honestly, Olivia, it's chaos over there. No one knows what's happening. And Camille, look, I don't want to be rude, but she talks like a brochure." I smiled sadly, and that sounds about right. He paused. "Then you ever think about consulting?" I looked down at my laptop, at the half-written headline on my draft site. "Yeah," I said. "I'm thinking about it." "Well, when you're ready?" I've got 3 projects waiting for someone who actually knows what they're doing. After I hung up, I just sat there, watching the steam curl up from my untouched latte. It was beginning, not a revenge arc, not a comeback story, something quieter, slower, but somehow more honest. That weekend, Nina invited me to a housewarming. I almost didn't go. I wasn't in the mood to see ex-colleagues laughing over charcuterie while pretending we hadn't all lived through corporate dysfunction together. But something in her voice nudged me. "You need to see what's happening from the outside," she'd said. "It'll give you clarity." So I went. The apartment was bright, small, filled with color and people in startup hoodies holding kombucha. I slipped into a corner, wine in hand, scanning faces. 10 minutes later, someone tapped my shoulder. I turned and there she was, Claire Ramsey, the first ops manager I'd ever hired. We hadn't spoken in over a year. She'd left after a reorg pushed her into a role 2 levels below her capabilities. "Olivia," she whispered and pulled me into a hug. "You have no idea how many people are glad you're out." I blinked, glad she nodded, eyes sharp, because it means they can finally speak up. We stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker on across the skyline. "You know, he replaced me with a guy who didn't know how to run a basic forecast," Claire said. "Darren's whole plan is smoke and mirrors. It's not sustainable." I felt a familiar ache bloom behind my ribs. "It never was," I murmured. Later that night, as I walked home, my inbox pinged again. A message from a client I hadn't heard from in 6 months. "Saw the announcement. Didn't seem like your style to just walk away. If you ever want to talk about consulting, I'm all ears." Back in my apartment, I opened a new document. At the top, I typed one sentence. They replaced me at the table, so I built my own. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something resembling peace, or maybe purpose. The first real explosion came on a Monday. I was doing laundry when the first message landed, an alert from LinkedIn. A contact of mine had shared an anonymous post. After 3 years of consistent, thoughtful service from a Boston-based firm, I was suddenly contacted by someone who didn't know our history, didn't understand our tech stack, and treated me like I was the problem for asking questions. Leadership may have changed, but not for the better. They didn't name names, but they didn't have to. Anyone in the industry would know exactly who the poster was talking about. I sat down on the edge of the bed, socks still warm in my hands. The comments were brutal. "This is what happens when you replace competence with connections. Had a similar experience last week. No accountability, same firm, same problems. Yikes." The post had gone viral within hours. By the time I checked again that night, it had 3,000 likes, dozens of shares, and somehow the email signature from Darren's company was trending on a design subreddit for corporate gaslighting templates. I didn't post anything, didn't comment, but I couldn't stop watching and waiting. By Wednesday, my phone lit up with a message from Sarah Kim, my former HR lead. "Olivia, it's bad. You should see the internal Slack. Everyone's panicking. Camille just deleted the client tracking system. Thought it was spam?" I blinked. Duh, she deleted the entire CRM platform. "Yes," asked I to replace it with a simpler dashboard she found on YouTube. I stared at the message for a full minute before responding. "Is there a backup?" Mike warned her not to do it without one. She told him he was being resistant to change. Of course she did. The next day, I received a LinkedIn message from Tom, a senior sales exec who used to sit across from me. "Day 2 of the crash. We can't access any client info. Emails down. Camille's MIA. People are updating resumes in real time." He added a crying emoji, then a popcorn one. By Friday, it was everywhere. Tech blogs, private Slack channels, even an internal memo from the company leaked to a subreddit for burned-out analysts. Camille's dashboard had no data encryption. When it failed, it took billing, contracts, and vendor systems down with it. They've lost 3 major clients this week. 2 more are reconsidering. CEOs blaming market headwinds, classic. Meanwhile, I was sipping coffee at a corner table in Elaine Carter's office. Elaine, CEO of Northwood Insight, a mid-sized firm with a scrappy, rising reputation, had asked to meet again. We'd met once before at a panel where we'd both spoken. She remembered everything I'd said. She folded her hands and looked me squarely in the eye. "Let's cut to it. Olivia, I want to work with you." I blinked. "Work how? Consulting. Maybe more. We're planning to scale. I need someone who understands not just operations, but people, culture, integrity." The word lingered in the room like perfume. Integrity. It had been months since I'd heard that word and believed the speaker meant it. Back at home that night, I opened my inbox and found another surprise. A forwarded email still addressed to the full company distro list. Apparently, no one had removed my access. The subject line, "Embracing Change and Innovation, a Message from Leadership." I almost didn't open it. But curiosity wins when indignation brews. It began, "Change is never easy, but it is necessary. We are thrilled to have Camille Shaw leading the charge into a more modern, agile future." I stared at the blinking cursor. The woman had deleted their backbone system, and now she was leading the charge. The next paragraph was worse. "Some may feel uncertain, but Camille's fresh vision is the direction our industry is heading." Fresh vision. She pitched an existing client on services they already had. She uploaded internal budget sheets to the wrong Google folder and sent them to a competitor. But sure, fresh vision. I forwarded the email to Nina with one word. "Seriously," she replied a minute later. "He's doubling down. This is going to get ugly." And it did. By the following Monday, Harvard Business Review published a new article, "When Nepotism Pretends to be Leadership." It didn't mention names, but it might as well have. The story of a mid-sized Boston tech firm replacing an experienced woman leader with a family member. The result? 3 major clients lost in 6 weeks. A system-wide data failure. 40% staff turnover. Financial manipulation through projected revenue reporting. The tone wasn't angry, just clinical, cold, damning. The best comment came from someone anonymous. Likely internal day 1 deleted client system. Day 2 pitched existing clients' old services. Day 3 couldn't search the database and blamed IT. Day 4 tried to replace an ops legend with a niece. This is corporate comedy gold. I took a screenshot and sent it to Nina. She replied, "Told you, get your popcorn." That night, I poured myself a glass of red wine, sat by the window, and let the truth settle in. I didn't need revenge. Reality had taken care of that for me. It came at 11:12 p.m. My phone rang once, then again, unknown number. I stared at it from across the room, unsure whether to answer. I hadn't saved his number, but I knew who it was. After everything, I still recognized the silence that came before his voice. "Olivia, please don't hang up." I didn't speak, just sat there in my apartment, legs folded under me, the glow of the screen casting strange shadows on the walls. "It's Darren," he said after a long pause, as if I needed reminding. His voice sounded different. Less sure, less polished, worn down. "I know I messed up." He continued, "I know I made a mistake. The board, the clients, the investors, they all want you back. Still." I said nothing, because what do you say to someone who spent years taking credit for your work, only to watch their empire crumble without you? "You can write your own offer," he added quickly. "Any salary, any title. Hell, I'll give you equity." His voice cracked slightly. "I'm begging you, Olivia. The company is falling apart." I let the silence stretch, not to be cruel, but because I wanted him to feel it, the weight of what he'd done, not just to me, but to everyone who had trusted him. And then, calmly, I spoke. "Find someone competent to run operations, Darren, fire Camille, admit you were wrong." He didn't respond, and more importantly, I added, voice quiet but certain, "Learn to treat people with respect, before they hold power over you." Then I hung up, and for the first time since that awful morning over coffee, I felt light, not triumphant, not vindictive, just free. 3 weeks later, the news broke. Northwood Insight was acquiring Blake and Rowan. At 40% of its former valuation, it was, by every definition, a fire sale. Elaine Carter called me personally before it hit the press. "Olivia," she said, her voice crisp but kind. "This wasn't planned. The opportunity came up. We moved fast. I understand. I replied, "It's a smart move." There was a pause, then the board made a request. I raised an eyebrow. "What kind of request they want you to oversee the integration?" I blinked. As a consultant, as the new chief operating officer? I leaned back in my chair. The view outside my window was quiet, just blinking red tower lights and the hum of a city too tired to sleep. "I'm interested," I said, "but I have conditions." Elaine didn't hesitate. "Name them. Full transparency in operations. No nepotism in hiring. A culture built on dignity, not obedience." She laughed, but there was no sarcasm in it, only admiration. Done. The signing took place in a glass-walled conference room on the 42nd floor of a downtown tower. Elaine, the board, and legal counsel on one side, the remnants of Darren's leadership team on the other. He was there too, looking smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but diminished, worn by the weight of months of chaos and the consequences of his own hubris. Camille sat beside him, scrolling her phone, visibly out of place. When Elaine stood and addressed the room, she gestured toward me. "I'd like to formally introduce Olivia Monroe," she said, "our new chief operating officer." There was polite applause, but Darren's eyes met mine across the table. There it was, recognition, and something else. Not admiration, not warmth, not even regret. Something closer to fear, and I didn't hate it. After the papers were signed, Darren approached me. "Olivia," he started. Let's focus on moving forward," I said gently. "There's a lot of work to do." He nodded, slowly, then held out his hand. I shook it, and was surprised to find I felt nothing, not anger, not pain, not satisfaction, just closure. The next morning, I walked into the office building I once helped build. Everything looked the same, but everything had changed. And this time, I wasn't here to be tolerated. I was here to lead. In the main open space, I heard commotion. As I turned the corner, I saw Sarah, Tom, Jenny, and half the old team standing by the break room. When they saw me, they started clapping. It wasn't dramatic, just real. Like a long-held breath, finally exhaled, Sarah stepped forward, eyes brimming. "You're back," she said, voice shaking. "Not exactly." I smiled, "But I'm here to help fix things." Tom nodded, stepping forward. "We should have spoken up. I shook my head gently and you were surviving, I get it. But now, we rebuild." Jenny wiped a tear. "We missed you." "Olivia. This place wasn't the same without you." Looking around, I felt something I hadn't in months. A responsibility to protect, to build again, to lead not for power, but for people. I clapped my hands together. "All right," I said, "let's get to work." And this time, they didn't just follow, they believed. 2 months into the transition, I received a message request on LinkedIn from a name I didn't expect. Maya Torres, a reporter for Business and Equity Weekly. Her message was brief. "I've been following the acquisition and your leadership trajectory. Would you be open to an interview not about the company, but about the story behind the silence I think our readers would benefit?" I stared at it for a while. The story behind the silence. The interview wasn't flashy. No camera crew, no bright lights, just a modest studio in Boston, 2 chairs, and a producer who offered me tea instead of coffee somehow. Maya had remembered that detail. We sat across from each other in soft armchairs, the mic barely noticeable between us. She leaned forward gently. "No pressure, Olivia." But when you were removed from your position, there was no statement, no post, no bitterness, just silence. Why I smiled. And for the first time in a long time, I let the words come. "Silence isn't weakness," I said softly. "It's often where strength lives." Maya tilted her head. "Can you explain?" I nodded. "When people take things from you, your role, your reputation, your seat at the table, it's tempting to shout, to burn everything down on the way out. And believe me, I thought about it. A pause. But sometimes, the most radical thing you can do is preserve your energy, protect your name, and wait. I let that settle for a moment, then added, they underestimated me. That was their first mistake, but their second was assuming I needed their platform to rise. Maya was silent, but the crew behind the glass window all leaned in. What advice would you give? She asked finally. To anyone going through what you went through, I took a deep breath, then spoke directly into the mic. You're not crazy. You're not too sensitive. And you're not imagining it. I paused. If they replace you with someone who doesn't know what you built, it's not because you weren't good enough. It's because your excellence made them uncomfortable. Don't shrink to fit their comfort. That evening, the interview aired online. I didn't promote it, but it spread anyway, within a week. I received over 200 messages, women from Seattle to St. Louis, mid-level managers, entry-level analysts, single moms, first-generation college grads, and they all said the same thing. Thank you for telling the truth without shouting. I needed to hear this today. I thought I was alone. One message stood out. It was from Camille Shaw. Yes, her. I watched your interview. I just wanted to say I didn't realize how much harm I caused. I'm trying to learn. I know it's not your job to help me, but thank you for showing grace. I didn't reply. Some lessons are better left unacknowledged, but I did feel something I hadn't expected: peace. At work, things were moving fast. Elaine and I rebuilt the company culture from the inside out. We scrapped outdated policies, created equity-based hiring pipelines, brought in mental health support for managers and teams. We didn't just rebuild a company, we redefined what success looked like. One evening, standing in the office alone after a long day, I walked past the coffee machine, the same kind Darren had stood beside when he blindsided me. I poured a cup slowly, then smiled to myself. The irony wasn't lost on me. Fired over coffee, rebuilt over grace, I took a sip and kept walking. Sometimes. The loudest strength is the quietest voice. Olivia didn't shout. She didn't beg. She didn't seek revenge. She chose dignity. She chose growth. She chose to rise without stepping on anyone else to do it. But let's not forget, she was fired not because she failed, but because someone believed family ties meant more than competence. She was replaced not because she lacked value, but because her calm power made them uncomfortable. This is not just a story about one woman. It's about the many who are overlooked, underestimated, and pushed aside, simply because they don't fit someone else's picture of power. It's time we stop rewarding arrogance and start recognizing the quiet leaders who hold everything together behind the scenes. If this story moved you, if it made you reflect, or reminded you of someone you know, then please, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more real, raw, and powerful stories, because we're just getting started. Your voice matters, your presence matters, and your silence, it can shake mountains. See you in the next story.